Hey there, rednecks, preppies, redneck preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great. Good. I was watching a fishing video recently and the host made a pretty interesting point. He noted that it was comparatively rare for largemouth bass to hit weights over 2 to 3 pounds. Any that even reached 2 pounds, a weight that I would submit most of us would not be overly excited by, was a very intelligent survivor. And that kind of got me to thinking, all things being equal, what kind of odds and timeline would it take for a bass to reach certain milestone weights and sizes? Now, I'm going to say at the outset that numbers can vary very wildly given the range of conditions that bass live in North America, all the way from Mexico and Puerto Rico to northern Canada. We're not even going to touch on bass in Japan, where a 22-pound, 4-ounce largie was caught on Lake Biwa back in 2009. A 10-pound largemouth bass in Florida may be comparatively young thanks to a virtually all-year growth season versus one in Ontario where that season will only span a few months a year. So I'm going to split the difference in location and therefore the numbers. With the knowledge that everything I say going forward isn't going to be universally applicable. In fact, possibly off the further I get away from where I'm going to put my rhetorical anchor. The Commonwealth of Kentucky will be the source of much of the data in this video, so at least I know where one group isn't going to call me an idiot. Maybe. However, let's try our best with this. Now, the first challenge that any bass has is simply being born. Now, depending on what source you consult, the number of eggs that a female largemouth bass lays is anywhere from 2,000 to 30,000 eggs. Smallmouth bass nests are between 2,000 and 20,000 eggs. Now, the number largely depends on the size of the female. This is going to shock you. The bigger the fish, the more eggs. Now, thanks to predation and other natural factors, some of those eggs never see fry hatched from them. That said, depending on water temperature, those eggs will hatch between 3 to 6 days, though possibly as long as 10 days. Now, if it's big fish that you're interested in, you can immediately eliminate half the fish born because they're males. In the world of bass, it's the ladies that tend to grow up big. Reason for that? Female bass bodies need to be longer, contributing obviously to a larger weight to accommodate all those eggs they will put in a nest. Now, after the first year, a largemouth bass located in Kentucky can hit about 7 inches in length and weigh between half to a full pound, though likely on the higher end of that range. Now, in year 2, that same fish hit just over 11 inches in length, and by year 3, it's nearly 14 inches long and weighs perhaps a pound and a half to maybe 2 pounds. Now, growth after this stage starts to slow down. Year 4 only sees that largemouth just under 15 inches and 16 inches in the 5th year, hitting nearly about 2.5 to 3 pounds in weight. Now, between years 6 and 9, the average fish only grows from about 17 inches to 19 inches, just 2 inches. In terms of weight, growing from not quite 3 pounds to just under 4 pounds. It isn't until year 10 that a largemouth bass crosses that 20-inch line and weighs from 5 to 6 pounds. Again, in Kentucky. In Florida, with its strain of largemouth, that's a fish that's hardly worth noticing. So, as these numbers tend to unsurprisingly suggest, increased weight and size are a time game for largemouth bass. The longer a bass lives, particularly in an abundant environment, the larger it's going to grow. Generally speaking, a largemouth bass will live between 9 and 11 years, though in some extraordinary circumstances, a few can hit over 2 decades. That, of course, leads us to mortality. How many fish tend to make it through each of the annual hurdles? What are the chances of a fish surviving to a ripe old age? Make things simple, we're only going to look at wild fish and not those in captivity, as those tend to have shorter lives. Now, I'm going to say at the outset, there's not a lot of research conducted on this specific topic, at least with largemouth bass. There are plenty of scientific studies which have looked at various factors that impact mortality rates, particularly catch and release fishing tournaments or water temperatures. I haven't been able to find more expansive research into general mortality rates. You can't, however, keep a good redneck preppy down, and I was able to locate some data. Now, in the early stages of a largemouth bass's life, that is less than 1 year of age, you're probably not going to be too surprised to find that the mortality rate can be staggeringly high. There are studies out there that show mortality rates ranging anywhere from 30 to 70% after the first year. There are various factors that influence mortality rates at this age, which include predation, that might be the biggest one, water quality, habitat, and how much food there is. Now, as with most species, the mortality rate begins to drop as the fish gets older. For the ages of 1 and 2 years, I've seen a number of estimates range from 10 to 30% dying off annually. And those mortality rates decrease even further from ages 3 to 5, when the fish is anywhere from 1.5 pounds to 3 pounds. Thanks to fewer fish being able to eat something of that size, mortality rates for largemouth bass drop to about 5 to 15% a year. Past age 5, I just wasn't able to find much data. All of the material I did go over suggested that predation wasn't much of a factor at that age and higher, and that fish death past that point was largely due to age-related factors or the environment. So unfortunately, I can't tell you how many fish in a nest in year 0 will make it to 10 years, as the data doesn't appear to exist. That said, given that up to 70% of largemouth bass out of a nest are dead before their first birthday, we're talking as few as 6,000 survivors after 1 year out of 20,000 eggs. And if we follow the math, we're looking at about 3,500 fish surviving after 10 years. That's not a lot when you consider that we started at the absolute upper range of 20,000 eggs and assume all 100% of them actually hatched. In reality, most nests are far smaller than 20,000 eggs, and a lot of fish are trying to eat those eggs. If we accept that most largemouth bass only live about 10 years, that doesn't leave much time to hit weights of 8 pounds or more, which signifies to most people a trophy fish. So obviously a multitude of factors tie into this, and I've mentioned most of them already. Where the habitat is located, the length of the growing season, food availability, quality of habitat, disease, predation, among others. So the title of this video, There Are No Small Fish. Clearly, the numbers that I relayed to you certainly show that there are small fish. I, however, try and look at it differently. The odds are against any bass reaching lunker status. So really, any fish making it to even, eater status is impressive. And I'll put it another way. Some decades back, a Hawaiian surfing guru was asked the secret to riding the perfect wave. He thought about it for about a minute and responded, "It's better to try and ride each wave perfectly than to wait to ride a perfect wave." Enjoy every fish, even the small ones. At any rate, I hope you found today's video at least be vaguely entertaining and mildly informative. As always, I hope your catches are bountiful regardless of what you fish for. Take care, and bye-bye.